All right, hard yarners. Before we get to our guest, Basil Zempilas, and what we spoke about today, this episode is brought to you by alltradescover.com.au. Actually, the middle guy. That's what we talked about a bit today. They're specialise in basically all of the tradies that are in the middle, the big business, the small business. Right. So if you're watching at home, you'll see behind our incredible guest there, All Trades Cover. But they do cover, I guess any sort of tradies. Oh, do you actually require any sort of like campaign sort of stuff?
I might do actually.
I wonder. Yeah. I'm not 100% certain.
I'd like to get one of those little boxes made that I can sort of step up on and spruik the message.
Yeah, if you fall over,
they could help out.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. I think they could cover you.
There they are.
Now look, he's constantly told me never give an example of what can be covered because then legally he might have to cover it. So,
right. Okay.
But all trades cover if you're a big business, small business, specifically the tradies. They're really good at
good work, All Trades. Thank you,
mate. They're very good. Oh,
good
John
to have you along.
Yeah, he's good. Actually, do you know who John? He walked across Australia with 6 camels. And,
did he?
Yeah. Oh, mate, incredible man. I should introduce you sometime.
Unusual thing to do.
Yeah, no, very good. But he's a very unusual man. But thank you so much, John. All Trades Cover.
Good on you, John. Thank you, mate.
This episode's also brought to you by Crafted Finance, which is Luke Ted.
Now, is Luke less or more unusual?
No, Luke Tedesco. He's a former, former captain.
West Perth.
West Perth boy. So, but mate, Crafted Finance, they specialise in basically giving you your best mortgage advice possible. But assets.
Hard at it, Luke was on the field.
Mate,
is he hard at it with Crafted Finance?
He does the work.
He
actually, strangely enough, they went and lived in Mexico for 6 months, and he was able to operate the business abroad. But you have to switch the times.
That's a loose operation.
Mate, that's a tough one.
What were they doing in Mexico?
Mexico and Spain, I think it was. So
just travelling the world,
life experience. I think
he's hard at it playing footy.
Mate,
does he get his head over the pool?
Yeah, he's got to avoid the head contact these days. Of course. Mate, Crafted Finance, hit them up. The links are in my bio and in the show notes. But Crafted Finance, they were very disillusioned to a point with the way the banks treat people and almost just give people.
I thought you were going to say the Hard Yarns podcast. Not disillusioned with that.
Of course not. No, he loves it. He's great. He's a good supporter of it. But if you want a loan, they're going to give you the best loan possible. They're not going to worry about just getting
everyone.
You're
saying that to everyone.
Yeah, well,
okay.
You as well if you want. But basically, they're more encouraged by trying to give people the best advice. They don't want. They're not just going to try and get you the loan. Good. They're going to give you the best long-term numbers, so you're not paying so much tax. Oh, not tax, but all the interest rates.
Payments, all
exactly. So
good on you, Luke.
Instead of just leaving the system, he's like, how can I benefit people because the system's never going, is it? So,
but tell you what, his time in Mexico and Spain has served him well.
Very good, mate.
Did he have those ideas before he went away?
I don't know. Yeah.
That was time well spent, Luke.
Very time
well done.
But thanks so much to our sponsors. But today we were joined by Baz, the Lord Mayor. Well, not
former Lord Mayor.
Former Lord Mayor of Perth, but
now leader of the opposition.
Current leader of the opposition Liberal Party. What do we talk about today?
Well, we're talking about my broadcast career.
Yes.
And sort of how we got going. A bit of West Perth thrown in there.
Yep, of course.
I will talk about the one injury I didn't sustain, which I wish I had sustained.
Yes, correct.
We'll leave that for you.
Yep.
And then I guess to transition into politics, Lord Mayor, and now as leader of the Liberal Party. And I guess we talk about some of the controversy along the way as well, but why I reckon that controversy is fine, because that makes you better all round.
Mate, I love it. That's a good summation of the episode, talking a lot about authenticity and whatnot. And I never have to tell this to the listeners, but this isn't me aligning with the Liberal Party, but I like to hear everyone's point of view. And, mate, you gave a really good account of yourself and good chat. So
thank you. I like the political disclaimer thrown in there as well.
Bloody awesome, awesome chat. And, without further ado, let's get hard.
Welcome to Hard Yarns Podcast.
I am fucking fat.
Anything Chris White says, please disregard it.
5D is actually a state of being. It's a unity consciousness.
That was Hard Yarns with me, Frankie Rose. So I'm going to throw it over to your co-host,
Daniel Delby.
And Cameron Branch.
I would do this and then I'd gong.
Free in attendance for the millions listening at home. Let's get hard.
But mate, really do appreciate you coming on.
You're welcome. No, my pleasure.
We've had, I think, in regards to politics, we've had, I think, someone from every party except for Labor.
Right.
So this is good. I like having the discussions with people. And
good stuff.
but before we get into politics and stuff like that, we've got a bit of a common background, both West Perth past players. So I'm not sure people know that too well about you.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of the footage. You were pretty
No, they're
pretty handy.
They probably don't now.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah, because it's. I mean, I know, but but it's a long time ago now.
Yeah. So when were you playing at West Perth?
1990 to 1994.
So you just missed the premiership, 95.
I did, yeah. Well, we'll talk about that. If it comes up,
Well, the premiership just came up. Like they just had their reunion.
I saw that.
I went down to the Derby and
When did you play?
I played 2006 to 2014. So it's okay. And full disclosure, I swear a lot on this podcast, so you speak how you want to speak. But I went to the game last week. Sorry, yesterday actually, or Saturday when I watched West Perth. It was Shane Nelson's 250th, and went down there and sat on the hill. I'm actually making a documentary about West Perth at the moment, called The Team We Love, just the ins and outs of it. So. But anyway, went down and watching, and there's a new young player wearing 59, which was my first number. I was like, I'll have a look into this kid, and he's born 200006.
Wow.
The year, my first season. And I went, oh, fuck, I'm old. Shit.
Amazing.
So,
amazing.
But that...
it hits you fast. It does hit you fast,
Mate, because you were a ruckman?
Yeah, ruckman forward.
Yeah.
No, I loved it. And then, anyway, we'll talk about it. I won't.
Yeah, mate. Oh, you talk about it. Tell us about your time at West Perth. Because Stevie T told me, Stevie Truell, I don't know if you remember, he told me you were pretty handy, sort of a lot more handy than people would probably give you credit for.
Have we started?
Yeah.
Oh, we have?
Yeah.
Sorry,
mate.
Sorry.
This is good, though. This is how natural the conversation is. So.
Gotcha. So I loved footy. Absolutely loved it. Always barracked for West Perth. Wanted to play for West Perth. And managed to get, I was in Claremont District, but managed to get to West Perth in a three-way swap.
Yeah.
Probably the greatest regret of my football career, because as it turned out, Jared Neesham was coaching Claremont. Everyone that was in his system went big time.
So good.
And I slaved away at West Perth, but I loved the club and it meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
And then I'd had a lot of injuries. I played some good games, kicked 5 goals in a second semi on the father of the famous Brayshaw brothers, Mark Brayshaw. He was centre-half back. I was centre-half forward that day, kicked 5 in a second semi, got injured in the prelim, didn't play in the grand final, and then 2 years later, West Perth won the grand final, which was tremendous. But I was studying journalism, and in the middle of it all, I was doing bits and pieces, and then out of the blue got offered a job at Channel 7, a final year cadetship.
Yeah.
That was the start of 1994. West Perth had just moved to Joondalup.
Yeah.
So I had the rare privilege as one of about, I don't know, maybe 30 of us, 40 of us, who played home games at Leederville Oval for West Perth and also home games at Joondalup.
Wow.
So my last season was West Perth's first season at Joondalup.
Wow.
And halfway through that year, Jeff Geesham was our coach, went on to coach Richmond and was the umpires coach. Halfway through that season, it was clear that I was not going to be able to do both, and I had to pull the pin.
Oh, mate.
But I'd not had much luck with footy.
Yeah.
And sort of out of nowhere, a job at Channel 7 appeared. I'd studied journalism, got this opportunity, and it was pretty clear to me, geez, these opportunities aren't going to come along that often.
Yeah.
Grab it, take it while you can. So I joke about having broken every bone in my body in my 24 league games, except my nose. The only one I wanted to break, my nose, to go in there and get it fixed, and I didn't break it. So bad luck, but anyway, it led to my broadcast career starting early, and that's really important. If you can start early, you need time on the block in broadcast, and I was lucky enough to get that.
Well, I'm starting to see that myself. She got into this a lot earlier, but that is the thing with waffle, isn't it? Like the balance, time balance, like you have to make a decision. Like
it is hard, and I had hoped to play AFL footy. I'd trained with West Coast a few times in sort of talent. In those days, players from the Waffle would come and actually train.
Yeah, I remember,
It's not like that now.
No.
And then when Freo were putting together their first squad, I was working at 7. So it was 1994. Neesham was appointed during the season, and I was going down doing interviews.
Okay.
And he said to me a couple of times, and the CEO said to me a couple of times, your name's on a long list of players that we want to invite to be in our first training squad. It didn't mean I was going to be on the list.
Yeah.
And I sort of thought, it can't be right. I mean, I'm not playing waffle anymore. I've stopped playing because I'm doing this job.
Yeah.
But obviously, knowing if I knew then what I knew now, maybe I should have. But it just seemed to me that I had this great opportunity. I was working at 7. was pretty big time back then, travelling to Melbourne regularly because West Coast was still new. Fremantle was coming in.
Yep.
And so I didn't get those opportunities at that level that I might have hoped to. But albeit a brief time and some hard yards, we finished last my first couple of seasons. But then 1993, we finished on top of the ladder. We were really starting to knock on the door.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's a big, and I was talking about this with Cam McLaren, who was on the other day. We're talking about West Perth and the people in placements of power around the AFL, like Gavin Bell, head of the West Coast, Max Bailey, Gavin Bell was my Colts coach,
right? Yeah,
and Max Bailey was my ruckman in Colts.
Okay,
but they're the head of Hawthorn and West Coast, two of the biggest clubs in the AFL.
Yeah, and
yourself doing very well, obviously in the media and now in politics.
That's very kind.
Dennis, obviously he's not really involved anymore, but Dennis was it must have been a mentor to you.
He was, and one of the things I think all West Perthies loved on Friday night footy, big time Friday night footy, especially in that last part of it. He and Bruce together, Lee Matthews, and then subsequent people after that. Yeah. But then always, as you would know, always weaved in a bit of West Perth every second Friday night.
I heard him, yeah.
And that was. I reckon that was really great for everybody at the club.
Yeah.
And when I came through during that period, I've started with Saturday afternoon footy, not quite as high profile as Friday night footy, but then had the opportunity to do Saturday night games, big Sunday games, called Richmond's prelim when they got into the grand final, first grand final they won out of the three. And it was big time. I loved it. I mean, but I loved how Den was a West Perth man. Yeah. Everybody knew it.
That's right.
And one, he had his standing was such that he could refer to West Perth, and no one sort of, like some people, I often thought Bruce and Lee are probably looking at him going, what are you talking about, mate? West Perth back at Leederville Oval in the 80s or 70s. But he was such a big figure and such a brilliant broadcaster. It didn't matter what Den said, it sounded magnificent.
Oh, mate, incredible. And I miss those days, him and Bruce on the Friday night specifically was always great. But that sort of, that leads into maybe where we're going, because you were... Obviously, you've gone through the media. You've come into football, which is sports commentary, sports presenter, I guess, and then that's a big move to go from that. I guess you started. Did you start hosting Sunrise from memory?
Yeah, I was doing Weekend Sunrise and used to fill in on the Monday to Friday show. So I called the tennis, did the swimming for a long time.
Yeah,
I went to 9 Olympics, summer and winter, and I had as good a broadcast career, and I'm not saying that about me, but I'm entirely satisfied. How lucky was I? And I was based in Perth the whole time.
Yeah.
And actually, I often say this: without Den having lived in Perth but blazed that trail of being able to live in Perth but still be a big network contributor. He was flying east every weekend. I don't think I and subsequent others would have had that opportunity. And I was really lucky to come through just at that time when networks were still spending money pretty reasonably. And so my first calling the footy 5 or 6 years, I travelled almost every weekend to Melbourne, Saturday afternoons, and then who retired? Somebody retired. Den retired. Retired. BT went from Saturday nights into Friday nights, and I went from Saturdays into Saturday nights and called with Luke Darcy and that crew, Richo, and they were spectacular times. And then right at the end of that, I was asked to do Weekend Sunrise, and I sort of I was doing less footy and doing Weekend Sunrise, but I was travelling every single weekend then. I was leaving Perth every Friday and coming home Sunday afternoon. It was a big commitment. 3 young kids, it was a big commitment.
Well, I've often thought about that because in my head I think, footy commentating or that sort of stuff would be the dream job.
Yeah.
And then I think about the amount you'd be travelling every week. And I mean, that's the same with AFL, I guess, if you're, especially a West Coast or a Fremantle, you're travelling every second weekend. But that would be that'd be pretty tough.
Yeah, look, the travel component just becomes part of it, and people would say, oh, how'd you do that, and how did you manage that? And then I'd say, if you live 50 minutes away from work, your commute to work every day becomes a part of what you do.
Yeah.
You get in the car, you try and dodge the traffic, you put your favourite show on, when the news comes on, am I running late, running early, all those things.
Yeah.
So the flight and the airport part of it just became part of what you did.
Yeah.
I used, again... the great benefit of being mates with Dennis and knowing him so well. He was always my role model, and he used to use the plane flight over to do work. And by this stage, we'd perfected. Initially, it was on discs, and then on thumb drives. And you could. So if I was doing Saturday night, if I was flying over to do Melbourne and Collingwood, I would have Melbourne's game from the week before. And maybe a couple, Collingwoods, and I'd watch a couple of quarters of each, make sure I knew the players, looking at those sorts of things. So you use the time pretty well. It's also when you might come up with a few lines that, this would be half handy to say, or if this happens, you might sort of come out with that. And so you make the travel work for you. I think that's the key to it.
Yeah, it must be, when it comes to like family life and balancing, have you got kids?
Yeah, 3 young kids, so
like
it was tricky.
Kids, wife, like that sort of stuff. Must be a difficult life.
It was my first season calling Saturday night footy, which is you're then into prime time. My third had just been born. He was born on the 10th of July. I reckon it was a Wednesday, and that Saturday night I was in Darwin. I remember. Alice Springs it might have been.
Yeah.
Alice or Darwin. Might have been Darwin. Yeah. Calling a Saturday night game, had to get up there a day early. So literally had to, kiss my little fella goodbye, say goodbye to my wife who'd done all the work, leave the bigger kids with Grandma and Papa and get up there and call the footy. And yes, it was difficult, and difficult for my wife in particular. Then I had 2 years of Sunrise off the back of that. So it was really solid.
Yeah, and this is why often... like your partner, the support they give you, and like almost the freedom to chase you.
Can't do it without them. You absolutely cannot do it without them. And they, everyone who's had that sort of career, male or female,
vice versa. Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes they're stay-at-home dads or dads who are back home working but do the pick up and drop off. And especially in politics, you find it's often the other way around.
Well, this is the thing, and it's a great segue into politics, because I've been told, you should get into politics, because I know I'm very neutral.
You should actually. Who would you run for, Cam?
Oh, well,
you one of ours, or are you?
I'm a nothing.
Agnostic.
I'm independent, I would suggest.
Are you a swinging voter?
I have. So, okay, well, this is interesting,
because I've started... I don't want to put you on the pump on your own show, but I'm prepared to do it.
No, very good. No, I like that. That's good. No one ever asked me questions, so this is good.
You don't have to cough up, by the way, but do you vote for one mob most of the time?
Never
so
been.
You're a swinging voter, probably.
Yes, definitely. And I was probably an idiot voter as well. I was one of those people who thought, and we can talk about this later on, but Labor aren't doing good, so I'm voting Liberal. Liberal ain't doing good. So, and now I realise also how important a strong crossbench, having some independents, some different people in different parties. So if Liberal or Labor just put something up, it's not just going to get rammed down the throat like we see with Labor at the moment with the majority. And and a perfect example was the misinformation bill. I think it was last year, and obviously federal, but there was such a strong crossbench where if Labor really wanted to get this across, and because we had these independents say, we're not doing it, it got a bit of discernment, it got a bit of a looking at, and people were like, I don't think this is right. There's some parts of that are valuable.
And I think you've nailed it. And, I know you're using that term in a sort of almost self-deprecating way, the idiot voter, but actually it's that crew in the middle who don't vote the same way all the time that in many ways become A, the most influential, but B, the most important, because unlike the American system where it's not compulsory to vote. So really what you're trying to do is get your base out. So the left or the right, you're trying to appeal to them to come out and vote. In our system, it's compulsory. Everyone has to vote. So therefore it becomes the people in the middle who sometimes vote that way or sometimes vote that way. But I think you're absolutely right. And it's probably one of the reasons why I feel like the role that I'm playing at the moment is so important with my colleagues is at a state level, Labor have had really significant control. They've controlled both houses of Parliament. That means they've been able to get whatever legislation they've wanted to get through. Now, not all of it bad, of course. They've done lots of good things. And I don't think anyone likes a politician who just thinks, the opposition are always bad.
Well, that's actually
they're not.
Quite refreshing to hear.
Well, they're not. They've done lots of good things. There's been some things, though, that have been quite contentious where they've been able to use their numbers just to ram it through. Now, I'm pleased to be able to say there's a few more numbers around me, and certainly in the upper house where legislation gets scrutinised, there are more numbers and a different balance with Greens and other independents. And so, therefore, it's not just the unfettered run that they had previously. And although that's useful for us at the moment as the Libs, I think and you've touched on it, it's really important for politics and the political balance anywhere any time.
Yeah.
And if it was the other way around, I think the government of the day, if it was a Liberal government, would say, well, you know what, we're actually better if the opposition are better. It's a bit like footy.
Yeah.
We play better
100%,
footy
yeah.
when the opposition is better. We prepare better. We probably put more into our match day tactics.
Yeah.
We're certainly identifying the strengths and weaknesses of the opposition. If it's a bottom of the ladder team, we're going through the motions of doing all of that, but do we really do it? And is our mindset really the same when Saturday comes around? Probably not. So a strong opposition is important because I think that way we get the best out of the government, and that means the best for the state.
Yeah. Well, I often see, and that's, we're into politics now, so I often see, I've had friends go into politics and then they've had to toe the party line that they're going with, and I'm interested what your thoughts are on that, because there is a part of, like, I'm sure every person goes into politics with the best of intentions.
Yes.
They don't go in to be like a yes man. They want to make a difference.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they just can't get across and they have to say yes to keep their...
It's an interesting... So it's a really good point that you make. Obviously, everybody comes with their own ideas.
Yeah.
Typically, values draw you towards one party or another.
Yeah.
And so you'd like to think that most of my teammates and most of the other people's teammates, they'd have similar values. That's why they're in a particular political party. But does that give them the right to also say what they think and act the way they feel if they don't want to be, you know, necessarily locked together with the team view? And I suppose if we apply it to sport, you know, if I'm a freewheeling half forward and think I don't have to chase up the ground because my best way of getting the footy is getting loose and running into space. And you know, if my centre half back trots up the field, off he goes.
Yeah.
The coach wants me to run with him. The coach wants me to keep him accountable. No free space, no easy ball.
Okay.
But I want to play a different way because I think I'll get more of the footy my way.
But
well, what's the right way to go?
Yeah.
And so discipline, team structures, all of those sorts of things come into it. Now, I guess in politics and in footy, we all know there's been the odd player that's just peeled off and done whatever because there's an opportunity. Kicks a goal, happy days.
Yeah.
And the same in politics, but by and large, team structures are hugely important. And with team structures comes pretty clear instructions, discipline, and an understanding of what everybody's role in the team is. And in that way, sport and politics, not much different.
Yeah, and I totally get that. Especially that's a great analogy. But what if in that case that one-off player is correct in their discernment and their opinion? Is it better for the party to, I guess, consider their opinion?
Yeah.
Or is it to just go, no, you stick in line, this is what we're going to do?
No, well, that's a fair point. And so the way it works in the Libs, and I can't speak for how it works in others, but we have a thing called the party room. That's all of the team members. We're one short of an AFL team on the field at the moment. We've got 17.
Yeah, okay.
We're a long way up from where we were at the last election, but 17 of us. We're playing one short on the field, but it's all right. We can cover that. Yeah. And so if there's an issue coming up before Parliament, whoever the shadow or the spokesperson for that who has responsibility for that, they'll present a summary of the issue with a recommendation, and then we vote.
Okay.
And if we vote to support a certain position, the expectation is that we lock in on that position. And I reckon that what I've just said then in a sentence is pretty much what almost every AFL coach, every high-performance coach, every CEO in every well-functioning and high-performing business would say.
Yeah.
There's a game plan. We've come up with a game plan. We've come up with it together.
We've got to see
We're
it through.
sticking to it.
Yep.
Otherwise, the wheels fall off. Now, you're probably too young to remember Gary Ablett Senior.
Oh, I remember him. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't like him.
So,
because you're so good.
Right, yeah, fair enough. So I think he rarely trained. He trained on his own. He did what he wanted.
Oh, okay.
If he came to training Thursday night in the days when Thursdays were the main sessions, 5 o'clock at night, and trained for 15 minutes, that was enough for Geelong because they knew what they were going to get was unbelievably brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, that might have worked in footy, but it probably doesn't work too often in the structures or the political area that I'm in. And so discipline is so important.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you can't entertain, and there is the right forum. For if we were on the same team, here's the party view, you've got a different view, you'd get the opportunity to speak.
Yeah.
You would get the opportunity to say to your teammates, hey, guys, I see where you're going, but have you considered this, and this? I've spoken to these people in my community. They offer this alternate view. I think we should consider that. But ultimately, it becomes the team decision.
Well, I guess, and that's a great explanation of it. I guess the fear surrounding that is if the party decides to go a certain direction.
Yeah.
If that party has been, I guess, leveraged by private corporations, we see. I mean, in my opinion, perfect example is Mark McGowan.
Yeah.
You could very clearly see through his time that I used to complain about him a lot, and people used to think, oh, you're just, against the COVID lockdowns and stuff. And I'd be like, no, well, his loyalty to the resource industry and prioritising their profits and gains really concerned me. And then he stepped straight into jobs in BHP and these sorts of things. And you see that time and time again. My concern is, what if those people at the top and a Liberal Party, I'm not convinced that they wouldn't be too dissimilar. Yeah. So, like, how do we change that? So if they are leveraged or compromised by these sorts of companies, and they're the ones making the decisions, you got to tie in, you got to toe the line. Yeah. That's my concern.
Yeah, what I would say about that is, I think by and large, in the sort of democratic society that we live in, and I think whether you're Labor or Liberal or anything in between, I think we value a fair go. I think we all value common sense. I think we all value doing the right thing. Now, that doesn't mean that those things always happen all of the time.
Yeah.
But I think we're pretty good at keeping each other, our community around us, pretty honest. And eventually, if someone is guilty of those sorts of things, eventually they'll get sorted out.
Yeah.
And I'm... you often hear, it's an old saying, might have been Churchill, democracy, it's not the best form of, it's not perfect, but it's the best form that we've got.
Yeah.
And I think that is true. Typically it'll sort itself out, and you can't get away with too much for too long.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, but then it seems like you can sometimes with these companies paying taxes, and we see the Northwest Shelf agreement. I don't know what the Liberal Party's stance on that.
So we're in favour of that.
Okay, so that's interesting because, my sort of, I guess, it's not like it's ironic that both parties are very strong for like climate change and that sort of stuff, but then they're also willing to sell off these fossil fuels and sell it to another company that's they're going to send them overseas to another international corporation, China or wherever they're going to send it. It's still going into the same atmosphere.
Yes.
So it's just, I find that quite contradictory.
Yeah, and I understand that. I suppose what I would say with gas, for example, is I think all sides of politics have established that, yes, we want more renewables and we'd like to get to all renewables and we'd like to get to net zero. But we're not going to be able to get there without a firming fuel. The best of the firming fuels, of the fossil fuels, is gas. It emits less carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and can be turned on and turned off. So, for example, if we've got solar panels throughout the state and we've got wind turbines throughout the state and it's blowing a gale and the sun doesn't stop shining, you beauty. We don't have to use any gas. We can turn it off. But what happens when there's no wind or there's no sun because it's overcast for 2 months? We're going to need something to be able to boost it up. And the other thing I'll say is, yes, that gas will go overseas. But what we're doing is we're helping those countries reach net zero by doing it as well, because they also need the gas to be able to rely on their solar, their wind, or their water turbines. So it's an important ingredient, gas. It's an important ingredient in the pathway to net zero and towards renewables really taking off and really being our main source of energy.
Yeah.
Can't do it without it is what I'm saying.
I mean, and the idea is more, I guess, towards this concept of they're making the profits and not paying bugger all in royalties or taxes, which would then help us at least with our cost of living. And these corporations, international corporations mostly, end up doing the profits. So is that something like, if we were to work towards that and continue to do these sorts of things, you see a perfect example, I think it was Norway, and they said, we're just going to up our taxes to, I think it's quite a lot, I think it's about 70 or 80%, and all the mining companies, they threatened. They said, no, we're leaving, we're buggering off. And they didn't, and they just paid more tax. They're not going to walk away from billions of dollars of profits.
So it's finding that right balance, isn't it? Because what you don't want to do is tax them or charge them royalties that stops them doing what they're doing. Because remember, if BHP or Rio or FMG or Roy Hill, if they stop doing what they're doing, how many people watching us right now are employed in the mining industry? How many of our mates, how many of our family, how many of the people that are going to walk past the street? So we want those people to have jobs. We want our economy to be strong. But yes, at the same time, we want to be able to earn the income that we should be able to, because after all, they're our natural resources.
Yeah.
They are ours. They're Western Australia's. They belong to the people.
And we should benefit from them.
We should. I think the mining companies would tell you they do pay their share of tax.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, we're always going to argue that, aren't we? We'd like more.
Yep.
They'd like to pay less. They'd say we do pay a lot, and here's all the things we're responsible for. But I don't think we should ever underestimate how many West Aussies are employed and employed well in the mining and resources industry. A lot of West Aussies have done very well by working for those big firms and some of the smaller firms as well.
Could it even, I don't even know if this is an option. This is just me as a layman talking. Is it an option where the state could run the mining sector?
Well, it could, and that's what happens in Russia, and that's what happens in other places. The problem with that is, are we as good at it? A, do we have that expertise? And two, can we afford to take those risks? And so what happens at the moment is Roy Hill or BHP might peg a ground of land. Now, to be able to get those resources out of the ground, get them on a train, crush them up, put them on a boat and send them to wherever they're going is enormously expensive and incredibly complicated. Now, the Liberal Party philosophy is less government involvement, get the private sector to do what they are good at doing. Why should we be taking the risk? Because what if it doesn't work? So they're the ones taking the risk. Ultimately, they get the rewards as well. But if the system's right, we should all get the rewards.
See, I'm probably half of each, because I'm not set on this net zero idea. I'm all for, just because I don't necessarily think net zero or these sorts of things are going to make an impact doesn't mean I think we should stop. We should be polluting.
And remember, just on that though, and I was reminded of this a couple of years ago. Remember, it's net zero. It's not total zero. So net zero means there is still going to be emissions.
Of course.
And we haven't worked out how not to have any. So it's net zero. It's getting renewables to a level that they are in play, that they counteract the emissions that are still going into the atmosphere. So we're trying to get to there, knowing that there'll be a bit of this below the line and a bit of this still above the line. So we're trying to get to net zero, not total zero.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of other issues when it comes to renewables, which, around the wind turbines and the solar power and the way they make the batteries and whatnot. So there's obviously a few issues with that as well.
Well, the batteries have got to be so big, they're so expensive.
Yeah.
Are they reliable? Are they going to work? And that's why, just going back to the gas comment, that's why gas is important, because until such time as we know that stuff works, is 100% reliable, and you and I can not only keep our lights on, but the bill that comes with keeping our lights on we can afford. That's why we need the gas to keep us going.
And therein lies probably the next part of that conversation, that cost of living. Because the cost of living is it's a struggle. I rent at the moment because, life circumstances, sell your house just before COVID, think you've won, and then, oh no. Exactly. But
you're not the only one.
So
I've made plenty of blues like that
too. So, and this is I'm in a situation where if I wasn't living with friends, I'd be paying almost more in rent than I would be in a mortgage. And the cost of living is ridiculous. And that's probably heavily due to the rising price of energy costs. And that's probably paralleled with this move towards green energy and renewables, which is obviously more it's quite a lot more expensive. So how do we manage and balance that sort of changeover if that's what they're going to do? All of the balance.
Well, so affordability becomes, with energy, I think there's a few things. Well, we want sustainability. By and large, we want it to be good for the environment around us. We don't want it to be absolutely catastrophic. So as sustainable as possible, I think most people would agree on. We want reliability. We want to know, flick the light on or push the button to start whatever it is, turn the studio on, that it'll come on. And three, we want affordability. We want to be able to pay for it. And I think you sort of touched on something that I reckon a lot of people watching would resonate with. In a state as prosperous as ours, because of all of those resources that we have, all of those royalties that we get, and those huge surpluses that we've heard over the last 4 or 5 years. We're talking billions and billions. $3 billion, $4 billion, $5 billion. There was a $7 billion surplus. How is it that in Western Australia we haven't got a better handle on fees and charges, on homelessness, on hospitals, on the basics? And that's the bit I reckon that most people go, doesn't feel right.
No.
It doesn't feel right that we can live in such a prosperous place,
Yeah.
and yet those other things are sort of spiralling,
Yeah.
or we haven't got a handle on them. Why is that? And that's one of the things the opposition is here for, to keep asking those questions.
Yeah, and I do believe that's due to the Labor Party's, I guess, loyalty to the resource industry and prioritising them over the people. That's what it feels like to me. I'm not going to put myself in the camp of Liberal and just say, oh, well, you guys are going to do better. But would you do better, or is there an alignment that you guys would have?
Well, and then I guess you look at what that money's been spent on. And
Yeah.
so Metronet, for example, everybody knows about Metronet, and I don't think there's anybody who would say, well, if more people can have access to public transport, that's great. The problem from our point of view is that was a project that was supposed to cost about $3 billion. It's ended up costing, and is still happening, it's going to cost $14 billion or more by the time it's completed. So when I say, how is it that the hospitals aren't right, that homelessness still is not under control, that our fees and charges are going up, even though we've got this great prosperity, well, then you look at what the money's been spent on. And so is a $10 billion overspend on a project like that worth it or not? Ultimately, people will get the opportunity to decide it each time an election comes up. But we would say that the $13 billion spent on Metronet has not delivered value, has not represented or delivered value for money. And it could have been better spent on some of those other areas.
And, well, the question is why, and that's why I think transparency in donations needs to be pretty strong. Like if BHP, for example, if they gave me $1 million to do my campaign or whatever, they're probably going to want something in return for it. So I'd like.
What if they sponsored your show for $1 million?
Yeah.
but they wanted a certain amount of content in
Correct.
it. Would you?
No, and this is the thing.
Would
so
you agree?
So this is a perfect example. Me and Delby, the co-host, who's not
Where
here
is
today.
Delby, by the way?
He broke his
I was
ankle.
promised 2 superstars. I only got one.
So he's bloody. Broke his ankle in Bali.
Is he in Bali still?
Yeah, so
How's he getting
I think
home?
he just got back, and he's actually seeing a specialist this morning, which is why I can't do
Which
it.
A, B, or C of stupidity was it? Bungee jump? Was it bungee jumping?
It was no.
Was it jumping off a wall or a high fence or something?
No.
Was it a scooter?
That's well. I asked, and he's given the answer of. I'll tell you when I get back.
Right.
So I think it's probably
as long as it's not the fourth, which is ultimately the worst option, the banged up abroad option where he's carried something for someone, and it's none of that, is it?
No.
Okay.
But where was I going with that with Delby?
So you were going to talk about sponsorship.
Oh yeah, sponsorship. So we were asked.
Good thing I'm here. By the way.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, son. We were asked by Disney Plus to do some stuff, and we didn't like some of what they had been doing with. We talked about them on our podcast. We didn't like some of the messaging they were putting within their stories and whatnot. And
where would you have ended up, by the way? What platform would you have ended up on if they'd have come on board?
It would have been here, but we would have had to advertise certain things, and we had to actually sit here and.
Pretty big name though. You must
It's a
have
huge
thought
name.
about it. Disney Plus.
It's the biggest brand on the
biggest
planet.
entertainment network in the country, in the world.
And we went, wow, okay, so they're going to give us pretty decent money to do one reel on TikTok, and where do we sit with that? And we had to balance this sort of thing of do we take the money because we need it, we're a podcast, or do we stick with our morals? And we stuck with our morals so almost stupidly. But we had to stay, no, that's not the people we want.
Really.
We want people on that like-minded, who are down to earth, like All Trades Cover, for example, our sponsor. They're good people. I've been down to the insurance company and I get along with them. They're like-minded. Same with Crafted Insurance. They're the same sort of thing. So we accept people who want to do good.
What I would say, so you've got your own values and your own principles.
Yeah.
You would have looked at that and thought, wow, big opportunity here for a massive sugar hit.
Correct.
But in the end, I think, especially with something like this, and in life generally, or anyone that's forward-facing to the public, which we are, which I was in my previous career and I still am, in the end, you are what you are, right? And there's a level of authenticity that goes with it or not.
Yeah.
People know. The people will go, oh, that bloke's having a laugh.
Yeah.
That's okay for now. But if you are not true to who you are, if you are inauthentic for long enough, people will see right through you. And so what I would say to you guys is, A, congrats for making the best decision for you guys. Short sugar hit, might have been a bit of money in the bank, couple of months rent covered.
Correct.
You beauty. But where would that decision have led you in a year, 2 years, or 3 years? Might it have actually ultimately set you back? And that's what people do every day in life. They make decisions based on their values and their principles. And you hope that more often than not, the way you're brought up, what you believe, the things that are important to you, they're going to guide you through your decision-making life. And you think about it, how many decisions do we have to make in our, from the time we turn 10, we're making decisions every day of every week. And you hope you get more of them right than you get wrong.
Well, I hope so. But obviously that's a person with like their own individual morals and values. Like a party, do they have values and morals?
Of course they do, yeah.
So,
of course.
And so if a company like that comes up to Basil and says, right, we're going to give your campaign this, is it transparent?
Yeah, well, firstly, I'd say the mining companies... I'm
just using them as an example.
I get it. So the mining companies tend not to make donations to political parties, but they are transparent if they are. So if Woodside or Rio decided to make a donation to a political party, you would be able to read about it. Sometimes executives of those mining companies might come to individuals' fundraisers. So the guy running in a certain seat, he might have a fundraiser. All of that is declared. You could look on the website and see who has donated to which political party. And there is transparency around that. I mean, I suppose the other thing I'd say is ultimately it's very difficult to run a political campaign and to run a political party without sources of funding. It's actually almost impossible. And so you might argue that without those people contributing, you wouldn't have the level of representation that you have now. But I understand the conundrum, if you like, and the dilemma. But again, it does come back to people doing the right thing. And you might say, well, why would somebody donate to a political party if they didn't expect to be able to get something out of it? I understand that. That's a fair point to raise. What I always say is people will always have accessibility, but so will the bloke walking down the street who might knock on the door at my electorate office. He can come in and talk to me just as much as somebody who works at a mining company can. Access is one thing. A listening ear, the ability to explain what's important to you, but that doesn't mean I'm going to do something for you if I don't believe it's the right thing to be done.
And I mean, and it's great to hear that. I never know whether to believe it. I my interactions with you, which you probably don't remember, but around the footy club have always been nice. So
great.
I don't, I never judge someone off anyone else's opinion, but like I've revisited my opinions on everyone in politics. Like Pauline Hanson, I've been led to believe for my whole life she's a racist, and that's just what you're told on the news. The media wants to paint someone, so the media align with, that's another thing. So like, I'm interested with media alliances and how they paint people. I'm assuming you have some sort of relationship with Kerry Stokes.
Well, I've worked for him for 31 years.
That's what I mean.
So I have a very strong professional relationship. But if he rang me up today, well, I'm not in government. If he rang me, well, firstly, he wouldn't ring me up and say, I need you to do this for me. He's not that sort of bloke. We don't have that sort of relationship. I don't work for him now. But so we all have relationships with people. I've got relationships with people at the West Perth Footy Club because I used to play there. But it doesn't mean I'm going to grant them $1 million for a new grandstand tomorrow just because I have a relationship with them. My mum and dad might my mum's in a nursing home. It'd be great if they could have an awning put over their outdoor area so that they don't get wet when they're playing bingo. But just because my mum's there doesn't mean I'm going to do it. So I think in the end, and this all comes back to that authenticity. And people can't be fooled. If somebody does the wrong thing, they're going to get found out. In our system, with people's engagement and interest in it, the media's interest in it.
Certainly now.
People are going to get found out. And I would say, by and large, Labor and Liberal and all of the other parties, most people are there trying to do the right thing for the people that they represent.
I mean, I agree at heart that a lot of people go into those things with the best of intentions. So it's nice to hear that, and that authenticity stuff is good as well. But I think that also that has to be reflected in admitting when you're wrong. And
I was going to say this. I think part of it is, and you said, what if you go down a certain path or the party makes a decision?
Yeah.
And ultimately, well, that's not the right way. Well, I think that is hugely important. I often talk about this. I mean, one of the reasons why I feel quite comfortable in this space, even though I'm new to it, is it doesn't feel much different to what I was doing. I always say I was in the people business as a broadcaster. Dealing with people, TV and radio, writing a column. That was all about meeting people, dealing with people, chatting to people.
Yep.
So is this.
Yeah.
It's almost exactly the same. And the most Australian thing, I reckon just about the quality that most Australians admire in each other is the person who puts their hand up, goes, you know what, mate, I got it wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I made a blue on that. You're right, we should do it that way.
Yeah.
Now, who doesn't love that person and who doesn't respect them?
Yeah.
And you walk away from that interaction going, you know what, good on him.
Well, yeah,
or her.
this is what I said last week with Cam. We were talking about that, and it's these people who admit they're wrong. Unfortunately, they're met with, by media and the public, initially, a fucking, oh, mate, that's not good enough. Who cares? You did that wrong, and they'll cop it a bit. Yeah. But I do always feel like if you are staunch in that, like, no, I did, I'm sorry, I reckon a couple of days later you go, well, at least he or she said,
I love that Australian quality.
Yeah.
I think it's one of our best qualities.
Yeah.
That when somebody puts their hand up and genuinely says, you know what, I've thought about it, whatever the issue is, and wherever it is, at school, at work, in politics, sport, wherever, I reckon when somebody puts their hand up and says, I've had to think about it, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I said the wrong thing or I did the wrong thing, and you're right.
Yeah.
We're going to do it the other way. I think people love that and admire it.
Well, I think there's a big opportunity with that with regards to COVID and the situation, the way that was handled.
Yeah.
And now we see specifically with the children, healthy children not being recommended to have COVID vaccinations.
So I'm sensing you weren't in favour of the closures.
I was definitely not in favour. And the
jabs, you weren't in favour of those?
I was in favour of freedom of choice.
Yeah.
So I didn't end up getting vaccinated. I was going to, but my mum had a big bad reaction and nearly died. Yeah. And again, it was due to a predisposition that she didn't know she had, which was she was disposed to being she would get blood clots a lot easier and end up nearly killing her.
Yeah.
And I'm a son, so I probably have similar things. But my point was, I was like, no, the government shouldn't step in and tell us what to do. And especially the children one is the one that really irks me, because I have a child, and I remember a lot of my friends around me going, oh, we're going to get our kids vaccinated. Now, I said to them, just so I didn't really say to anyone. I used to say on the podcast, just so you're aware, on the website, it says that it's not been tested for effectiveness in children. And I remember saying that on the podcast. We got censored for saying that in particular. And I said, well, if there's no safety checks and there's no effective...
Who censored you, by the way?
Sorry?
Who censored you?
Instagram, Facebook.
Right. Okay, because that were the rules at the time. If you were spreading those sorts of messages, that could do that.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And we were called misinformation. And all I was doing was stating that, hey, just so we're clear, there's no any studies at all on kids. And now they've retracted it and said, no, those people were correct. Yeah. And there still isn't any effective studies on that. And there's no apologies from the government. There's no and this is where I think even McGowan, even though I hated the way he handled it, me and Delby always say this, if he was actually to go, as the leader, mate, I didn't know what was going on. We were in a very scary time. Yeah. I made some decisions that maybe in hindsight were terrible, or they weren't for the betterment of everyone. I'd probably go, look, mate, you've actually taken a little bit of a blame there, but to do that then puts you in the firing line. So I understand the fear of that. So what do we do there?
It's a really interesting conversation. I mean, first thing I'll say is, although Mark McGowan's politically not my way inclined,
yes,
the first thing I'd say about him in his leadership position at that time is there was no rule book.
No.
So they were making it up as they go along. When I say making it up, they had to come up with the procedures and protocols as they were going. That's the first thing I'll say. Secondly, again, he's Labor, I'm Lib.
Yep.
But secondly, I'd say I don't believe he was making decisions based on anything other than what's the right thing to do here for the most amount of people. What's the best thing?
Based on the information he was given.
Now, I get that for some people, and especially those who had health reactions to the jabs, and in particular those people who had family members who were in the other part of the country, and they couldn't get there to see them, to say goodbye in many instances. I understand how heartbreaking that was for them, but I genuinely don't think he was making those decisions, leaving that out of the picture. He was going with what he could go with when he had the chance to go with it.
I'd accept that as well. If he said that, because it doesn't seem like he's even admitted that, or his party.
And I've heard him say many times, and certainly Labor have, how many lives did we save by doing those things? And then I guess what I'd also then say is freedom of choice is something we love, and it's a quality that we are desperate to cling on to. But we don't, if I want to walk across the road and the signal is red, I can walk across the road, but I'm taking that risk then, right? And I could get fined for doing it.
Yeah.
In the old days when we used to go to Singapore, we all had to get a smallpox injection. And you couldn't not have it. When I travel to Greece, I've got to have a passport. I'd rather have no paperwork and fill out no forms. But I've got to do it because they're the rules. So you could in one say, we don't have those freedoms now. We do things that governments tell us to do, and that's a part of signing up to live in the sort of society that we do. But I do understand that in particular, when it comes to putting something into your body that didn't have the rigorous testing that it might have got in a period when we didn't need to react as quickly, I understand people's objections to it. From where I sat, and look, I've been medically... My family and I have been lucky. We're typically people that have not had those adverse reactions. Things have worked all right for us. I was the Lord Mayor at the time. I was really keen to get Perth moving again. Perth was a ghost town. And it became clear to me that the only way we were going to be able to get people working back in the city, coming back into the city, shops opening, restaurants opening, things happening again, was for us to sign up to what the government had decided was important. And they'd said, unless you get your second jab, life's not moving again. So I went and got them, and so did my family. But I absolutely understand your point of view and your perspective.
Well, on that, obviously being Lord Mayor, that's a big role, big position to get, and well done on getting that.
Thank you.
It's not come without its own controversies, and I'm not across it enough, but obviously the homeless stuff was slandering to you. A lot of people
they went hard at me with that.
The argument I'd make, like as almost, I want to say, in support of you. We don't want to see homeless people around, but we don't want to just see them shunned.
Absolutely right. And what's I find interesting about this, it's been a very good learning curve for me on politics and how issues can be politicised, how this was sort of weaponised against me. So given we've got some time, I'll go through it. So the city, when we were first elected, homelessness was a real issue. One of the things we came up with at the City of Perth was this concept of the safe night space. It was a place, say, a bit like this, where women in the first instance could come in and get shelter for the night if they were out on the street. Because we had this thing, well, yes, we need to find people houses, but if there was a lady that was preparing to sleep tonight out on the footpath in front of us, where could she go tonight so that she's not on the street? And that's how the idea started. And the concept that we came up with was the Safe Night Space. It was a City of Perth owned building that was going through a mixed use, needed a bit of work on it. And we thought, well, why don't we repurpose that and make that a place where people could come? And either rangers might find them on the street and say, hey, why don't you come to the Safe Night Space? Instead of sleeping out in the cold where it's dangerous, where you don't know what's going to happen, come to this Safe Night Space. There's not beds, but there's somewhere where you can have a lie down. You could have a shower. You could have something to eat. And that was the concept. The City of Perth started it. We funded it. And it happened in one of our buildings. And we said when we did it, it was a 2-year trial. So about a year out from the trial ending, we went to the government and said, listen, this is working pretty well, but as a local government, we're not going to be able to continue to fund this. What about you take it over from us in terms of the funding? We put that to them. And Premier Mark McGowan sat this far away from him, said, no, that's not the sort of thing we want to do. Okay, fair enough. And so then over the course of the next year, we ramped up the conversations about, hey, this is going to close if we can't get the alternate source of funding or somewhere else for it to go. We extended it by 6 months. So it ended up running for 2.5 years to try and give people more time to find an alternative, but nothing was found. At the same time, it was causing issues for the residents, City of Perth residents, who lived right next door and in the areas surrounding.
Yeah,
Remember, it was a trial.
Yep.
We didn't open it and say this is open forever. We opened it to trial it. It was working. We wanted to demonstrate that it could work. So ultimately, after 2.5 years, despite the government having lots of opportunities to come in, when there was a chance to find somewhere else, it closed. Now, I'll just jump ahead a little bit. It is open again.
Okay.
It is operating in the City of Perth and is supported by the City of Perth. Not to the same financial level, but City of Perth ranges and approvals and all of those things, they are still in place. Now, that was weaponised to buggery against me.
I'm sure it was.
And it was a huge learning curve for me. Now, notice no Lord Mayor or Mayor can make a decision. That is not our system.
Yeah.
The only way you can make decisions in council, in local government, is at council level with all of the councillors voting. And yes, the council did vote after 2.5 years, after promising to trial it, extending it for 6 months, giving 12 months notice. Yes, the council did vote to, okay, we're going to have to close at that location and seek another one. Another location has been found. But to hear it portrayed, to hear Labor talk about it, it sounds like I personally went and changed the locks on a building and didn't let anybody in.
Yeah.
And that's just not right. That is a Labor myth perpetuated against me. But here's what I like. They made a huge issue of it in the most recent campaign.
Yeah.
I reckon they spent $1 million targeting me with that messaging. But I managed to get enough people in the seat of Churchlands to understand what was right and what was not right. And I was elected. And I've since been elected leader of the Liberal Party and leader of the opposition. And I'm there to hold the government to account on that and lots of other things. And so in sport and in life, you don't get bitter, you get better. Great learning for me. I'm very pleased that the Safe Night space is open and operating. But I will remember how that was weaponised against me. I won't forget that.
Yeah. Well, would you use that as an example of how you, and this is, I hate this about politics, is the slandering of the opposition instead of saying, this is what I'm going to do. Who cares about the opposition?
Absolutely. And I agree with that. And certainly, so we've got a 4-year plan now because it's 4 years in between elections. And although at the moment, as a new opposition, a lot of what we do is hold the government to account, find areas where maybe they're not doing as well as they could, and highlight that to the community.
Yeah, because there's a difference between vocalising what you're seeing that's not working and slandering.
Also, we've got a pretty fundamental rule amongst our team, and that is we play the ball, not the man. So we'll highlight the issue.
Yeah.
But you don't hear us banging on about the individual.
Yeah, okay, cool.
We talk about the issue. We talk about the issue. But ultimately, this is my very firm view, and that of my teammates, is the way for us to win the next election in 2029 will be to come up with, well, firstly, to engage with the community, to listen, see what's important to you. What do you need?
Yep.
What do you want? What are you missing in your life, in your community? Writing the policies or devising the policies that address that, and then getting out there and selling the policies. I.e., here's our vision for the state. Here's what we represent. Here's how your life will be better and different if you elect us.
Yeah.
And my view is that that's something that at around about the halfway mark, and certainly at 3/4 time with a year to run, those sorts of policies need to start to be rolled out. I don't believe in the current cycle where everything sort of gets drip fed in the last 5 or 6 weeks, and you've got policies coming at your head and promises and this and that. I reckon that's a real turn off to lots of people.
Yeah.
And when we talk about inauthentic, I reckon most people in the community look at promise in the 4 or 5 weeks before an election and go, they're only doing that now because they want to win an election. I think the real way to win people over is outline a clear position, your philosophy, your vision. Say, here's what we stand for, here's what we're taking to the next election, and give people the time to understand, A, that it's real, and B, to get their heads around it. Go, you know what? I like what they're selling. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for them at the next election. That's the way to do it, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. The authenticity and that is good. I just it's too common where you just see someone slandering the opposition and I think
people get sick of it.
Well,
they get sick of it. And I know I've got this great. One of the great things for me, I was on Talkback Radio or FM radio for the better part of 25 years.
Mum and Dad listened. They said, "Oh, you got Baz on."
Happy days. Give them a shout out.
Yeah.
And so I know what it was like to be on the other side. And politics by and large, boring to most people.
Yeah.
Politicians, especially boring to most people. And the worst of it is when it's, oh, you said this, or you said that, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do that, or when you were in, you did this. People can't stand that. And so elevating beyond that is super important. And it is one of the things that me and the other Libs have as a priority. Yeah. It's a fine line. If Metronet has gone $10 billion over. So we're going to tell people that we think Metronet's $10 billion is excessive. And the Transport Minister through that period has been Rita Saffioti. So yes, we are going to mention the Transport Minister's name. Somebody had to make those decisions. Yeah. But we don't want to play the man and be personal about our attacks. That, I think, really loses people, and it's not our style.
Well, yes, I agree. Certainly with the people in Australia who are trying to do it. You see the opposite, obviously, with Trump. Like, Trump is an outlier.
Yeah.
He's the one. I guess the appeal of Trump is he does say he is that person who says whatever he wants.
Yeah, that's true. But again, remembering their political system is different.
Correct.
Not compulsory voting. So if I'm off politics, let's say it was a state election coming up here and I go, I'm sick of all of them.
Yep.
Guess what I can do?
Yeah.
Not turn out to vote. So in America, the people that do vote are the ones that are rusted on Democrat or rusted on Republican. And so what Trump is trying to do, and the Democrats for that matter, is appeal to their base.
Yeah.
That's who they need to get on election day to get out of their house, get out of their car, get off the bus and go and vote. Here, we are trying to appeal to a majority of the public.
Yeah.
And therefore, our politics is much more centrist.
Yeah.
And you often hear it described as the sensible centre.
Yeah.
I think that's where Labor and the Libs, by and large, want to play, because that's where the voters who determine outcomes of elections are. Those people in the middle will either go a bit left, which means Labor get up, or they'll go a bit right, which means the Libs will get up.
Yeah.
And that's the difference here.
Yeah, the wobbly middle is definitely the target in that regard, because, again, I'm a perfect example. Like, I'll find the team's policies that I think align with what I want. And, too often I just feel inauthenticity and just when instead of focusing on what they can do, focusing on what the opposition's doing poorly.
And that's a good point that you make, because I reckon, how old are you?
I'm 38.
Yeah, so I would say that your cohort, and young men down from you are probably the group in Australian politics who are the most disenfranchised. I reckon younger men, 40 and under, but particularly sort of that crew between 18 and 35, 18 and 40, I reckon you're the people who feel that politics least speaks to and are least listened to. And I reckon many young men think, the world's against us a bit.
Yeah,
or,
definitely.
everything's our fault. And we know that not to be the case.
Well, it's that pushing too far in the opposite direction. It's the overreach. So the overcorrection creates quite a big amount of resistance. So when we do, we make the move to building women up and bringing them into a bigger part of the having more rights, for example. That seemed to have been almost weaponized to a point where like men felt like, oh, now we're actually being put backwards. Yeah. And that's an interesting thing that I'll watch playing out. But that's not just women and men. That's everything.
Yeah, that's right. And so a couple of things on that. I think there was a time when, in all political positions, in all CEO and senior management roles, in senior journalists on TV, the talkback hosts, it was all men. And we would agree that needed to change.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that didn't represent modern life. So I think we have corrected that, and it is much, much better. I think we can still work towards even greater parity and sort of a more equality. However, it shouldn't come at the expense of young men who are sort of demonised or made to feel as though somehow they are responsible for the problems that we see going on around us. Because they're not. Some are, but there's bad there's bad
outliers.
eggs.
Yeah.
There's bad eggs in every cohort.
Yeah.
Seniors,
Well,
juniors.
masculinity is demonised, and they say toxic masculinity is that word that's used.
Yeah.
And there's not toxic masculinity. There's toxic women and there's toxic men.
Correct.
And
Yeah, that's true.
Because there's a man who's toxic, which
Yeah.
there are.
Yeah.
There are dickheads that float around
Yeah.
and just do stupid things.
Of course.
But that doesn't make me for wanting to go to the gym, have masculine traits, be the provider or whatever. That doesn't make me a toxic person.
No, that's right. And we want, in life, generally speaking, and certainly a liberal philosophy, a liberal value, we want merit-based success or merit-based advancement to be a hallmark of the lives we live. But I also think we would agree that sometimes you need a little circuit breaker.
Oh, yeah.
And so more women in positions of authority, leadership roles, senior management and politics can help encourage the next generation or those coming through.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I think most men want a system that represents the world around us. I think most people want to see, most guys want to see men and women be given the same opportunities.
Yeah.
Because common sense,
Yep.
that sense of a fair go, doing the right thing by people are quintessential Australian
Yep.
qualities. And most of us, Labor or Liberal, we agree with those. And so sometimes a circuit breaker or two can really make a difference. And that's why one of the challenges that we're going through at the moment, the Liberal Party, is at the last two elections, state and federal, we didn't appeal to enough women. We didn't appeal to enough younger voters. And I put, you and your cohort in that
Thank
in
you
that
for
bracket.
calling me young.
Well, you are.
Yeah.
And so finding ways to better resonate and better to reflect those groups in our community is really important to us.
I certainly agree. And yeah, the demonisation of men it's not just men. Like there's demonisation of so many things, and it's almost like a tribalism that we see. It's this idea of like left versus right.
Yeah.
Whereas no, there's no left right. There shouldn't be a liberal Labor. It should be like what's right for the vast majority of people.
No, that's exactly right. It should be, and we want our best people to lead, and those that have done the work and have got the knowledge and have got those qualities. But we also don't want to hold the options back for people. We want people to see that if I'm a man or a woman, those opportunities are open to me.
Yeah, that's quite logical, and that's a
Pretty basic, really.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
It's
exactly.
pretty straightforward and
I think
basic.
it's when it's chucked in your face, and what are they? Is it DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, for the sake of it?
Yeah.
Where it's not merit based, that's where people start to get a bit annoyed, and
Yes.
that's that overcorrection that I was talking about.
And that's why one of my absolute core values, and it is of the Liberal Party as well, is common sense. So yes, of course, we need people given opportunities, because if they don't get the opportunities, how are we going to know if they can do it? But at the same time, that doesn't mean excluding a section of the community that typically have had those opportunities.
Yeah.
They also need to be given those chances. Otherwise, what happens to them? Otherwise, the world will flip completely.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's pretty basic, isn't it? Common sense is a principle, but, more often than not, it'll give you the answer you need.
Yeah, and I guess so. That comes to something that you've been talking about quite recently, and I'm sort of like on the fence with this one because you've actually changed my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
So I went to the supercars yesterday.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the motorplex.
Yeah.
I went to the supercars yesterday. Actually, shout out Tradie. I'm wearing Tradie.
You are too. Yeah, happy days.
Yeah, Dave Reynolds. He was he's been on the podcast a few times.
Yeah,
absolute legend of a drive.
Got the V8 supercar chairs.
Yeah,
too. I
mate,
like it.
exactly.
Magnificent.
They go red makes you go fast.
Yeah.
But he's an absolute legend. He's a good man, and he got us involved, gets us tickets to take my daughter down there, took me nieces down there, and we get pit access. Absolute incredible experience. Get the grid walk. I love it. So, this is beside the point, but like Scotty rocks up and he treats her like he's his own daughter, like just shows her around, and I love it.
Magnificent.
But that experience that we have there, it's great. It's a great day. It's good people. Everyone's happy. Like it's probably not carbon friendly. There's a carbon footprint there, but so this obviously has now we've gone to Burswood.
Yeah.
And it's such a big thing at the moment. F1 is obviously starting to get people excited about motorsports again. You've oppose this Burswood Motorplex. Now I'm like, wow, this is going to be so good. As a sports fan, I want to see it. Yeah. And then you've raised the point that, the people in Burswood, the local people, aren't even considered. As a person who loves the motorsport, but then also has this idea of like the government just doing what they want to do when they say they're going to do it without considering people, I'm also very opposed to. So
so that was the thing for us. Look, I've come from a sporting and big events background.
Yeah.
I know how fabulous they are.
Yeah.
And I know the impact they have on cities. I love them and will always champion them. So my issue with the Burswood racetrack is not motorsport. I love motorsport.
Yeah.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I also know that we've got a really decent track at Wanneroo, which probably could do with some upgrades because it's an ageing facility. But as you saw on the weekend, it still works. It hums along.
Yeah.
People love it. So it's not like we don't have motorsport at that level in Western Australia. We do. And so then with those other challenges and issues that we're talking about, hospitals, housing, cost of living, my question is, given there was no consultation with the local community, given there appears to be very little transparency around how they came up with this idea to plonk it there, given also it means that beautiful parkland will be gone. There'll be a racetrack there 24/7 throughout the year, which won't get used all the time. So suddenly a park will become there'll be a raceway there, even though it won't be being used all the time. And given the people themselves who live in the area say, we don't want this and we weren't consulted. That's what I have issue with. $220 million to build that facility at this time. Is that the best choice of money? Is that the right way to go about it? And the government will say, we've got a mandate to make decisions because we just won the last election.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But my counter to that is they don't have a mandate for reckless and wasteful spending, and they don't have a mandate to operate with a lack of transparency. And so it's on that basis, when schools could be better improved, primary schools operating out of demountables, when our ambulance ramping has just recorded a record, all-time May record in the previous month, could that $220 million be better used somewhere else, or by plonking a racetrack in the middle of Burswood, which we know the local community don't want?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it is interesting. It's again like I'm on the side of like, wow, how good would it be? Like it'd be so good, but it would be without considering their thoughts on it. It is an issue, but I guess these sorts of things. Do we consider? Is it less for you? Is it less the actual introduction of that and more like it could be better spent in other areas?
That's my view, yeah. So as I say, I mean, I love motorsport and I love big sport and big events. That's been my life. It's probably why I am where I am. So I'm never going to be anti-big sport and big events because I know how important they are to the local community.
And the money I guess
all
it can
of those
generate
things.
for them.
Yeah, all of those things. But could that $220 million be better spent at this time on priorities that a greater percentage of the community want? And so again, you're a motor racing fan, you like the idea. You probably don't live down there, do you?
No.
Right.
Oh, well, I'm a Wanneroo boy.
Okay,
but like,
so you live. You're
well,
gonna,
do you know what? I will have a complaint about Barbagallo. I play at Wanneroo Golf Course.
Right.
You can hear them buzzing around when I want my serenity. So sort that out, Baz.
It's part of the fun. So it's those things that I'm opposed to.
Okay.
And there's no business case, for example, done before they announced it. And I'm not even sure how many of the Labor members of Parliament, we know the big two that were out the front of it, the Premier and the Deputy Premier, they were there revving up the V8 on the day of the announcement. I'm not sure how widely their team members were consulted. I know the community weren't consulted, and I'm not even sure where the demand for it is. Nice idea, great. But what if I said, let's put it through Kings Park? Probably go, that'd be amazing too. Yeah. Well, we're not going to do that.
Well, couldn't we, and this probably circles back to the taxing of gas giants and whatnot. Couldn't we do both if we were to probably tax or up the royalties? I know you said there's a fine line between like pushing them away. I mean, I don't believe that they'll push them away. I think they're never going to turn away from billions of dollars of profits, whether it's 1 billion versus $500 million, whatever.
Sure.
They're still going to. Well, there's still a heap of profit there, so they're not going to turn away from that. Couldn't we do both?
Yeah. Well, and the government like to say you can walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm not sure how well they're going with that. But yes, overall, I do agree that in a community as prosperous as ours, and we talked about those surpluses and those mining royalties, we can do the big things and we can do the important things. Build hospitals, look after schools, build more houses. We should be able to do both. But the question on the racetrack is that the right place to put it? It means that parkland gets wiped out. And what was the process for reaching the decision that said we're going to plonk a racetrack right in the middle of Burswood Park? So they are the things that I question, and the Liberal Party in WA are questioning.
Well, it seems to be, and not to be like aligning with, again, my listeners know I'm never aligning with Liberal or never align with anyone. But
I'll get you one day already.
Yeah, the issue I have is this ramping stuff, the healthcare system. These were holes that were exposed prior to COVID. Then obviously COVID happened and we could see, it was just shown to us in plain day that our ramping numbers were going up so hard. It heavily exposed the Labor Party's, I guess, lack of funding for those sorts of areas that really severely needed improvement.
And look, I'm not doubting that they are spending money to try and address these issues, but the bottom line is it's not working. In opposition, they said 1,000 hours of ambulance ramping was a crisis. Last month just gone, we're at 5,000 and 6,000 hours of ambulance ramping. I mean, that and perhaps ambulance ramping has desensitised people to what it actually is, because ambulance ramping is sort of like a phrase now that most people go, oh yeah, whatever that is. Well, ambulance ramping is if your mum or dad gets sick and they call an ambulance, if there are ambulances queued up with patients in the back of them trying to get that patient into the emergency department, there will be a delay to that ambulance coming to your mum or dad's place to get them looked after. When that ambulance finally comes and they get in the back, if they then go to Royal Perth or Charlie's or Midland and there are other ambulances in front of them in the queue, your mum or dad will be in the back of that ambulance until such time as there is a bed available for them, or that the ED has got a room where they can take them to be properly assessed. Now, what could that, 20 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, what could that mean to mum or dad if she's acutely ill or some drama is unfolding in that time? And it can be the difference between life or death. And so our view is whatever money's being spent, and whatever priority is being given to it, it's not working. And so it needs to be done in a better or different way, because in another 2 years, where are we going to be at? 10,000 hours of ambulance ramping? And until such time as your mum or dad or one of my kids or my wife or my mum, until such time as it's them, ambulance ramping probably sounds like one of those things you hear on the news and you go, oh yeah, that sounds bad. 5,000 hours of ambulance ramping wasn't us, so thank goodness for that. But what about when it is? And so that's why we are vigilant on this, because we're talking about health and we're talking about people's lives, and that is important.
Yeah, it is interesting because we see Liberal and Labor parties, and they're the two major parties. So I see the mistakes that Dutton made. Like he, in my opinion, lost the unlosable election because people were very, I guess, really disengaged with what Albanese was doing. They're very unhappy.
It did seem that way.
And
did seem that way.
I think, I don't know if he felt like he came across authentically. So I think that's obviously one big lesson for the Liberal Party. But one thing I see commonly, and this is probably a very good position you're in, is Labor. People go, right, still not happy. We're going to just switch over to Liberal, same thing. And it's just back and forth of the same thing. So one, obviously you can't fall into the being too careless and just assume you're going to win, because there has been a massive change. There has been
we're a fair way behind still.
We've got a lot
of ground to make up,
but made a lot of ground in this recent election, which was interesting. But also Labor, we were talking federal, and we actually had our state, but we'll talk federal, won on 34%, which means 66% of the nation doesn't want that.
Didn't vote for them. Yeah.
So for me, that's a big showing, and that's one of the lowest. I think 32 was the lowest. I think that was in the last one, but still, that shows people are just disillusioned with the two major parties.
Yeah.
How do you then go, okay, we got to come back to what the people want, prioritize what the people want, less the corporations, less the big business, and go, right, this is what we're going to do differently.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That certainly at a federal level, the share of the vote that the major political parties has attracted has dropped away. I think the problem for the Libs has been that whereas a majority of the other parties are still preferencing Labor, and therefore they get up, and they got up with a very healthy majority. The Libs don't have that, and so therefore, as a result of the last federal election, we saw a really big gap, and that was a very handsome victory for Labor. I think one of the things for me, probably at a state level, that's important in this instance is, yes, it's about appealing to people, but it's about understanding why you're there and why it is you're doing what you're doing. And ultimately, we need to be there to represent the people that we seek to get their vote from so that we can represent them in Parliament. And I think if I was to look back at the most recent federal election, there was probably a couple of mistakes made that typically, or if you had the chance to go back and fix it up, you'd say, well, why did, that was silly. So, for example, there was an announcement about work from home. Now, whatever your view on work from home is, if you're trying to get elected, you need to also be able to understand that a lot of people work from home because it adds to their ability to have a family life, but also they're more productive, and it adds to the way that they can do their work by having that flexibility. And even if you don't agree with that, they wanted it. So to say, well, we're going to get rid of work from home, bang, there's a huge public sector and a huge cohort in our community that are working from home. So you've alienated them already. And I think the other thing is, this is a bit of a general learning. I think people want politicians to be nice. I think they want people, you don't have to pick a fight on every issue, on everything, all the time. And there was one issue that probably resonated for me at that level. It's not being critical of Peter Dutton, but you'll recall that he was asked about standing in front of flags.
Yeah.
And he said, I will only stand in front of the Australian flag. Now, I agree. There is only one Australian flag. We have multiple official flags of Australia, of which the Aboriginal flag and the Torres Strait Islander flag are included. Yeah. So is the West Australian flag, for example, with the black swan. They are official Australian flags, but they are not the Australian flag. So I agree with him. There is only one Australian flag. But in the grand scheme of life, of you trying to pay your bills, of you trying to look after your family, of you trying to go about your work, pay your rent, is that an issue that we are going to live and die by, standing in front of the flags? I mean, we don't care about that sort of stuff. That's a clear grab at people. Yeah, and you said it. Yeah, and you said it, and I think that's my point. The Aboriginal flag is a recognised symbol of Australia. Yeah, we all know it. Yeah. We were all proud of it. The Torres Strait Islander flag, because of the way Australia is made up, those in the Northern Australia, they identify with the Torres Strait Islander under the Torres Strait Islander banner. Yeah, fair enough. Now, as Lord Mayor for 5 years, I stood in front of the three flags every time I did any form of official function. Yeah. I also knew that there's only one Australian flag. It was the one in the middle, the one with the Southern Cross, the Union Jack, etc., etc. But was it going to change my life, or was it going to change people to pick a blue on that? And so I think, and again, I'm not being critical of Peter Dutton, but I suppose ultimately there's a little review of that element of it. Yeah. That was unnecessary and wasn't going to change people's lives. Yeah. Well, we just want to, so be nice. Yeah, well, this is it. As a general punter... You don't have to pick a fight on everything. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And to steal punters' politics, who we've had on the podcast, but we're all general punters. We just want to see what's real. Yeah. We can see through when you're just talking shit. Yeah. If you're just saying something you don't fully believe in, if you're just saying something for the sake of it. Correct. And again, this goes back to that appeal to Trump. Whether you hate him or love him, you know exactly what sort of person he is. He's a fucking dickhead. Yeah. But he says what he says. No, and that's a point. I suppose, if Donald Trump had stood up and said, I'm refusing to stand in front of that, you'd probably think, well, he means that. Yeah, exactly. I suppose the difficulty for Peter Dutton and the Libs in that federal campaign was, Was that an issue that was really motivating people within the community and the Liberal Party, and that was worth making a huge statement over? Or was it something that was done to design to try and appeal to a certain cross-section? And I think that's it for me. I'm not suggesting that Peter Dutton wasn't being authentic, but what I would say is, was it necessary? Is that the sort of thing that you want to, that you need to really go out on a limb over? And I think history would tell us, well, no, it wasn't.
I think he felt, like from the outside, it looked like he sort of half-assed the Trump idea. Like he sort of half went into the, I'm going to go staunch in this, and then he sort of towed the line.
And again, I know I've made a fair bit about this, but here's the difference between our systems. Over there, you've got to appeal to the bases, and the bases are on the fringes. Here, yes, you've got to be loyal to your base and you've got to be respectful of the principles that tie us together and the values that we have in common. But you also need to speak to the people in the middle. And my view is the people in the middle, many who are hardworking men and women of Australia, and Western Australia in my case, they just want to get on with life. They want to get the kids to school. They want to know the kids have got a good teacher. They want nice sporting facilities for the kids to be able to play. They want to know that if they need to build a house for them or for their kids, they're going to be able to find a house, pay the rent, be able to get it built. They're not worried about which flag we're standing in front of. And that's my point about the core of people in the middle. And I think that was an error in that sense.
It feels, and obviously coming at it from a different area, and I'm hopeful here because I talk to everyone. I never judge anyone from the outside just because of who they're aligned with. So I'm not going to sit here and go, Basil, you're aligned with Liberal, you're going to talk shit. But like, I think that's all that anyone wants is they just want to see people standing up for people. And I feel like, hopefully, I'm hopeful that you've got kids. You want to see your kids step into a world where they can afford to have a house. Like my daughter, I can barely afford one right now, but there's almost no chance my daughter's going to be able to afford a home when she's at that age. And that, as a parent, is like, that's devastating for me to hear or feel like that. Probably the only way she's going to get it is to be some sort of millionaire and make it really big.
It's getting tougher and tougher, and we worry about those.
I have to give her a home as I get older.
And so when we talk about right priorities, governments having the right priorities or our leaders having the right priorities, that's what we're talking about. And, that issue that I was talking about a moment ago, I'm not sure that was a huge priority for a lot of people. But a couple of things, and I'm lucky I'm sort of new at this game, and you learn a lot. You learn every day. You learn, so politics is a different space. You learn all the time, but you learn in life all the time. And so now I've got a 14-year-old daughter, soon to be 12, so two girls and a son who's not far away from turning 8. Now, one of the great things about being a parent with kids at school from another generation is you are learning all the time that what you might have thought or how you lived your life has changed. And what a gift that is. And what a gift that is to someone like me or any of my colleagues or people from either side of the political spectrum to have that sense of renewal washing through your family life and your world all the time. And so I'll talk to Ava in particular, who's 14, and I'll ask her views on stuff. Now, she said to me after the last election, so she's on TikTok, like most 14-year-olds. So if Amy and I could have had our time over, we would never have given her that mobile phone. And her younger daughter is paying the price. She hasn't got one because we've learned from the mistakes of the first one. But nonetheless, so Ava, like most 14-year-olds, access to social media, communicates with her friends that way. And we'll often start up a conversation now about something she'd seen in the news. Now, as a former news person, I go, where'd you hear that? I'm not doubting. She knows what she's talking about. And she goes, I saw it on TikTok. And it'll typically be either a Labor Party message or 7 News' version of the story or whoever else. But she's seeing the 20-second, 30-second version on TikTok. That's really interesting for a start. So this idea that young people aren't watching the news is wrong. They're just getting it in different places and in a different format. And she said to me not long after the last election, so this was really interesting for me, last federal election, in that wall of stuff that gets cranked out by all political parties, and Labor are really good at this, the thing that she mentioned to me was she noticed that Labor was offering free HECS. And so now she's 14, but she'll quickly be 17, and she's in that window. And so she knows the difference between Liberal and Labor. She knows that Dad's was a Liberal candidate and now a member of the Liberal Party. She also knows the difference between federal and state because they study that at school.
Yep.
But she said to me, she said, Dad, if I was voting now, I probably would have voted Labor because that is something that is relevant to me and appealed to me.
That's interesting coming from your own daughter to hear that. That must be...
That's right.
Quite
but
shocking.
so there's the point, right? There's the point. Again, we're talking about those people in the middle.
Yeah.
So I will try and speak to that group with the values and principles that I hold dear. But at the end of the day, if you can't talk to them about the stuff that is relevant and important to them, you're wasting your time.
I guess that's why platforms like this and social media platforms are so important. But then obviously misinformation bill and the social media ban, for example. I mean, I'm a little... I understand the dangers of social media. It's horrific. Like, I don't want my daughter doing certain things and
How
having
old's your
access.
daughter?
She's 7, nearly 8.
Right. So you're getting there, but not yet.
Yeah.
But it'll come around quick.
Exactly. And a part of me is like, well, this is the state, the government overstepping and telling me how to parent again and doing that. So, but
I think
again,
the thing I worry about with social media is not what, the searching, the this, the that, the talking to friends, the perhaps stuff that you wouldn't hope they wouldn't be doing, or that path. It's not so much. I think what you probably most worry about as a parent is what they might be exposed to and who they might be exposed to.
Correct, yeah.
And we clearly know that there are some people that live in that space that aren't who they say they are.
Yes.
And it's that worry. It's that worry. And especially as they start going out on their own, and my daughter's not at that yet, but not far off.
Yeah.
And, let's meet up. Well, what if that person
Yes.
is not the 15-year-old guy that she thinks he is going to be?
I totally agree on the premise and the idea because I think, and just what they're exposed to. But it's just this idea is always, these ideas are always put in under the guise of a good idea. And then they end up leveraged by the government where they'll use it for, for whatever reasons they want. I think the age verification argument has been there quite a lot. They want digital ID and the fear of that, it'll be connected to your wallets. And then
it does feel like the genie's out of the bottle too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when it's gone, it's gone. I mean, the flip side of that is internet banking and all of those things with two-stage verification, et cetera, that seems to be getting harder and harder and harder. Yeah. So I've got a feeling if they did want to prevent you going on, I'm pretty sure they could.
Well, this is the argument. If they wanted to, which they already did, I think in Canada with the farmer protests over there, they shut off people who were donating to them. They shut off their bank. So it doesn't have to be digital to be able to shut down your bank accounts.
Having said that, on the HEX thing, so I then did speak to Ava about, the liberal philosophy is that spending too much money on those sorts of things means that ultimately we're going to have to pay that money back. And your generation, as they get older, might end up getting taxed more because we've got this big debt because we paid your HEX debt. And so it's great that we can get into those conversations off the back of her seeing a TikTok story pop up that was a news item that, or maybe it was Labor's ad that targeted her directly because she's close to that zone. Yeah. So, this is what happens off the back of social media and off the back of young people being exposed to news and information.
Mate, I'm conscious of your time because you've been here for a while and I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, I was not checking. I was just thinking, what day is it and where are we? And
but it's been I guess the part of me that's coming across is this authenticity that you're talking about. And like, how can we trust you, for example? Yeah. Like, how can we trust the Liberal Party as being authentic? Yeah. Do they adopt this approach that I've been talking about, owning up to their problems and their things they've done incorrect in the past? Even in this current campaign, if you go down a pathway that you go, actually, do you know what? I was probably wrong there. Is that something you're going to adopt?
I think so. I think you have to because the beauty of a broadcast career and a pretty high-profile one is you can't fake it at all. No. I mean, the saying used to be you can only fake it for so long. I don't think you can fake it at all. Yeah. The other thing is not everybody is going to be pro Basil or love Basil.
No,
we get that.
Of course not. Yeah.
Of course we get that. But I do think also, 31 years on 7 and on the radio here. I think people have a respect for me and that I've worked hard and that I've only ever tried to promote WA and promote the organisations that I've worked for. And I think people know me, and I think they know what's real and what's not real. And as I say, I had a pretty big campaign against me, but I still was elected as the member for Churchlands to represent those people, and since been elected in other places. So it's a long way of saying I think ultimately you are what you are, and people are going to see straight through it if you try and be something that you're not. And I've always felt as though I've got a really good relationship with lots and lots of people in the community because I've been around them for a long time. They know sometimes he's a dickhead, bloke, but I don't mind him because and I feel like I've got that sort of relationship with people in WA. And ultimately that's what you get judged on.
I mean, I don't even know how you handled it, and we can go back on it, and I don't know if you want to chat about it, but obviously like you get the hot mics, and I remember I think it was the women's tennis. And like, do you know what? Okay, now I'm not saying it's great what you said, but also I just go like that's a guy having a joke, like just having it. Like,
I was never bothered by that because it was genuinely what I said it was. Was exactly what it was. And to Michael Genovese, who's now the Network 9 news director here in Perth, and played waffle footy. for
old Silver Fox,
good bloke, Jenna, and good looking dude. He to his credit, he verified what I'd said, and. The fact is, we were having a conversation about reading the news that night, and I said, but the tennis is on tonight. And having been in that position, when you read the news against live footy, live sport, live Olympics, the audience gets cut in shreds. So hardly anyone watches because they're watching the tennis final. And I said, it's the Rezzies then. And that was misinterpreted as I was talking about the women's final being the Rezzies. That's not what I said. So I was always okay with that. Because I knew.
So you were in reference to the reporting.
Correct. So I was because he was reading the news that night for Channel 9.
Almost giving him shit.
And I said, "Are you doing?" That's exactly what was happening. I said, "You're doing the news tonight, Michael." This is before we got started. He said, "Yeah, I'm reading tonight," and I said, the tennis is on." He goes, "Yeah," and I said, "It's the Rezzies then." Talking about the reading of the news being like a Rezzies match because it's up against the live
nothing
sport.
wrong with Rezzies. I played 153 bloody reserves games. But
I played a couple as well.
But isn't that's interesting because that's not how it's put across.
No, of course, when others get a hold of it and don't care about what the truth is, but just want to spread it one way.
Now, this was actually, and again, I'm not aligning with the Liberal Party. I'm not aligning with you, but Labor. I very rarely comment on anyone's posts, especially with like a bit of aggression. But Labor put up a thing about you saying you were I think it was misogynist?
Yeah, a bit of that.
And I don't care if it's true. Like, I don't.
Well, no, you would.
Well,
you should.
Yeah,
You
but
should.
as in,
But it's not.
It's not relevant.
No, it's not.
And it
was based off something
heavily
It
slandering.
was based off something that A, wasn't correct. B, the other person in the conversation had verified that it wasn't correct. And anyone, I appreciate it's a small circle of people who have done that role, know that that's what we used to talk about. But nonetheless, and ultimately, as I spoke about, people can call bull dust or not because they're not idiots. And the fact that didn't stop me, I was later pre-selected, then elected, and now in this role, that shows you what I'm talking about is right. If I had said what I'd said, said it in the way that was reported, and genuinely meant it, people would have worked out, no, that bloke's telling pork pies. But when presented with the facts, most people said, I get it. Right.
See, I wasn't even presented with the facts. I didn't know. I just hear that quick
Good
little...
thing we had this podcast today.
Well,
there
you go. That's a perfect example. And like, this is where I see that slander thing. And like I said, it's the first time
playing the man.
Yes.
And not the ball.
Well, that's my comment on their post was, how about you stop worrying about the opposition and focus on the people that are struggling?
It's amazing how many things come back to sport.
Yes.
And in politics and sport, they're so similar.
Yeah.
Worry about your own team and you'll take care of them. Look, that was what it was. I was never ultimately that bothered by it because I knew what was real. That story, the real information didn't get to you, but it got out there to enough people.
Well, and that's the issue, isn't it?
And that's true, and that's right. And so one of the issues has been it's easy to take a negative and use that one line.
Correct.
It's then harder to then explain. So you saw how long it took me to explain what really happened,
Yeah.
right? It also took me that long to explain what happened with the Safe Night Space. So the problem in this modern era is the line of trying to smash someone is short and sharp.
Very.
What you need to be able to go, no, that's not right, because I need to explain to you this, and this.
Yeah.
That takes a long time.
Well, this is what happens in newspapers when they report incorrectly, and then like
the apologies down there.
oh, it's a tiny little
900
retraction
pages in.
4 months later when
that's
no
right.
one cares about it.
That's
Like,
right.
well, the
Man-aged
damage is
chicken. Actually,
Yeah.
it was chicken treat.
Yeah,
That's right.
And so that's the concern. And I guess where does okay? So this is we can finish up on this because this I think is quite important. As a father, your kids are going to have to see your name. It will be
We were
slandered.
having this chat the other day, and Ava said to me, the eldest, and she said, I don't know why, but she was going through. Oh well, no, it's AI, I think now.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have AI, and I haven't got my head around it at all.
Oh, yeah.
Other than I feel like it's sort of Google on steroids.
Yes.
Because everything that people go, you can do that with AI. I go, yeah, Google can do that too. It just doesn't write it for you. But
Yeah.
but I get it. I get what it, and probably that's what AI is, isn't it? It's everything on the internet brought together and done for you. So I do accept it. But so she had looked me up, or I'd come up, and she was starting to ask me about some of these things. And actually, it was great because in the end, my own daughter asked me, "Well, what happened here, Dad?" And so we were able to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you can't fake it for long, including with your own family.
Yeah.
And
so is that a way, that almost like practice, to go, well, I've explained it to my daughters like
Yeah.
this. This is how I explain it to
a
people.
bit.
Or do you just not even, you just go, mate,
no,
you're just talking.
there's nothing. I mean, I'm better in this position as leader of the opposition and as leader of the Liberal Party. And now, I need to remind myself this as well. But I am pitching myself as the alternate premier of Western Australia, and the Liberal Party are pitching themselves as the alternate government of Western Australia. Now, I am a better version of that because of the life that I have led and all of the experiences that have gone into my life. I haven't got everything right. I've made blues. I've got some things wrong. There's been some silly things I've said on radio, carrying on breakfast radio, that probably wouldn't be best said in this role. But you know what?
Yeah.
Everyone watching this, everyone listening on the radio, everyone who sees any interview on TV, they've made mistakes too. They are real people as well. And so the rich tapestry of experiences that you have in your life makes you a better person, full stop. And in my case, makes me a better leader. And I would like to think makes me a better alternate premier than I would otherwise be. And ultimately, I'm a bloke who's lived all his life in Perth, made my own career, had some lucky breaks, made the most of them when they came. Yeah. Worked hard. Most of the time I was doing 2 or 3 jobs, trying to get ahead for my family and pay the mortgage and do those sorts of things. And now 16-year marriage and 3 great kids, and trying to bring them up and give them the opportunities that I've had, and try and teach them right from wrong and all of those things. And guess what? Most of the people listening or watching or living in Perth, that's been their experience as well. And I'm better for all of it, for the mistakes that I've made and for the things that I've done right, because that's how we learn.
I mean, I really, my camera's gone off, sorry. I really do truly hope that you are going to be the one that we want to see in and what you've presented here today, because it has been quite, it seems authentic.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I truly do hope it's not political speak and stuff like that. But
no, it is. You can't, look... Yeah, you're not a mug, and the people watching aren't mugs.
Yeah,
they'll work out. We'll see the comments at the bottom. They'll pop up soon enough.
Yeah.
And either you are what you are, or you're a bad actor who's going to get found out. And I am what I am, and this is how I've operated from day one. And so I'm optimistic about what's ahead, but I'm also success and failure, if you like. If this goes well, and I can help lead the Liberal Party into government, magnificent. But if I don't, or somebody else would be better in my role, then that's fine too. And my whole life and what comes from here is not locked in on that must happen for me to be a success or for this to have been worthwhile. Yeah. I'm loving what I'm doing. I feel incredibly fortunate to have had one really significant career, then, if you like, a transition career as Lord Mayor, which was a great introduction into politics and government at the local level, and now at state parliamentary level, I feel incredibly fortunate to be doing what I'm doing, and every day is a win because I'm in a space that I love, working hard for people, getting better all the time, and what a great opportunity to represent the people of Western Australia that exists at the end of it all. If it goes brilliantly, magnificent, and if it doesn't matter. We had a crack, and how good is that?
Mate, I appreciate your time and wish you nothing but the best. So thanks very much, mate. And
glad it was only you now.
Yeah.
Better, I reckon. He's got a lot to live up to when he's back.
Yeah, I'll tell you, mate. He'll be all right. But thanks so much, mate. And cheers.
Go the Falcons.
Yes.